Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Thanks for joining me today for voting video number 385 in the Incredible Mandela Effect voting video series. Okay, here we go. Now, before we get into this one, please remember that a thumb up is going to be the normal place where you would thumb up a video on YouTube. A thumb down for this video. People who have a memory of Sex and the City, please go to the top comment. It'll say thumb up this comment if you want to thumb down this video. That way we can get a thumb down count. A big Mandela effect from 2015 was Sex in the City versus Sex and the City, which I always knew as Sex in the City. I had never heard it as and the City until 2016 in the first half. So the reason I was prompted to finally do a voting video on this is because I've been in talks with someone who plans on having a conversation with the author of the book that spawned the TV series, Sex and the City. And so, you know, I'm only able to make this video because of the Mandela effect, and you'll see what I mean when you watch what I've put together here in a couple minutes. So I want you to keep in mind about the people who think that the Mandela effect is just misremembering as you watch this 12-minute segment that I put together. It's just absolutely mind-blowing. And I want you to pay attention to another book written by Candace, which is called Summer and the City, which she seems to remember it being called Summer in the City, which would make more sense, with Sex in the City, Summer in the City. And then her new book, Is There Still Sex in the City? That's the name of the new book. Now, this particular Mandela effect was really big when I started making videos. And I didn't do videos on Oscar Mayer, and I might have done a Febreze one, but I didn't do Interview with a Vampire. I didn't do Sex in the City. Those were being played out when I started making videos. Everyone was talking about those things. So I went on and started doing more videos on things that people weren't aware, that we were just discovering, and I was doing voting videos on those. So Candace Bushnell has her new book, which came out in 2019 actually, Sex in the City. But now we have all this new information, that wasn't around back in 2016. So I'm kind of glad I waited till now. So if you remember Sex in the City, I-N, please thumb up this video. If you remember Sex and the City, you're going to thumb down the video by thumbing up the top comment. So the top comment, I'm going to say, please thumb up this comment as a thumb down. Many of you know that's how I'm going forward, so that we can see the thumb up versus down, since YouTube took away the thumb down count. So this particular Mandela effect is actually very incredible, and I'm glad that I was prompted to make this video. You don't only have the author of the book that spawned the TV show from 98 to 2004, Remembering Sex in the City, Candace Bushnell here. You also have the producer, Darren Star, the writer, Michael Patrick King, all of the actresses, actors, almost everyone associated with Sex and the City remembers it being Sex in the City. It's amazing watching videos, doing the research. Almost everyone thought that the show was always called Sex in the City. This is absolutely bizarre doing this research. So I'm going to play this here for you. Please make sure you're sitting down. You might want to set any drink you may have. You want to set that down because this is absolutely mind-blowing. And for the people that say, oh, well, you can't tell if they're saying in or and, because when you say Sex and the City real fast, you can't tell whether I just said in or and. All right, I want you to keep that in mind. Keep in mind the people who say that the Mandela effect is just a bunch of people misremembering, there's nothing odd about it, there's nothing happening. Keep that in mind and watch this here. Watch not only Candace Bushnell's memory of her book and the TV series, but everyone else that's talking to her about it. Listen to what their memory is as well. Please keep in mind that I've been speaking with someone who's planning on having a conversation with Candace and speaking to her about her memory of the name of her book and the show. And what do you think she might say? Honestly, after watching what I'm going to show you, please leave a comment as to what you think she might say. I'm really interested in what you all think. So that's it. Please vote. Go create the reality that you want. I'll be back with everybody soon. Here you go. Enjoy.
Thank you.
And I wanted to ask you, Candace,
Thanks, Mama.
what made you write Sex and the City? Like, what were you trying to achieve when you decided to create this book?
Well, when I started, interestingly, it was really the same impetus writing Sex in the City and Is There Still Sex in the City?
I have neighbors.
And
there
that's a good
is.
question. Yes, exactly. But Sex in the City was really about a new passage in women's lives when they were single and you're, exploring your career and, looking for a partner and all of that. And then what happened was that a lot of the Sex in the City women, they got married and had children and all of that kind of thing. And Is There Still Sex in the City is about what happens after the happily ever after.
Is there a real life Mr. Big?
Well, there was a real life Mr. Big, but I did not marry him. But now I have a new boyfriend.
Okay.
And I met him while I was writing Is There Still Sex in the City, which is so interesting because I met Mr. Big while I was writing Sex in the City. So it's a good luck thing.
Yeah. Well, Sex and the City fans are about to find out more about their favorite New Yorkers, like who was Carrie Bradshaw before she became the Carrie Bradshaw, and those friends of hers. Where did they come from? How did they all meet? Where did it all start? Well, we find the answers in Candace Bushnell's new book, Summer in the City, and she joins us now to talk more about this. Candace, great to see you again.
Great to see you, Chris.
You are to Sex and the City what George Lucas is to Star Wars. This is, there are so many of these now.
Well, somebody made that comment.
But this is now this is where the comparison is made, because this is a prequel to last year's sequel, or sequel to last year's prequel.
It is. It's the sequel to the prequel, but it was basically the prequel is a two-part series. It's two books.
Yeah.
The Carrie Diaries was Carrie's first last year in high school, and Summer in the City picks up where the Carrie Diaries left off. She's arrived in New York, so it's her first summer in New York City. She meets Samantha and Miranda, and Charlotte comes in, but I'm not going to say when or how.
It's hard for me to believe that it's been so long since Sex and the City debuted on HBO, 1998.
Well, the crazy thing about it is I started writing it in 1994.
So this has been following you around for years.
But I love it. I have to say, writing Summer in the City, I had such a great time revisiting those characters in this new iteration and incarnation because they're young. Carrie is 17 turning 18.
Yeah, and that kind of shapes her, obviously.
And it really shapes her to become the Carrie who we meet, in the book Sex and the City and the series Sex and the City.
Now with Candace Bushnell, she is the writer and creative force behind the hit series Sex and the City. And now she's got a new book out. It's called Is There Still Sex in the City? It's loosely based on her life and follows a group of middle-aged women navigating the modern dating world. Candace, thank you so much for joining us. And
it's so exciting to be here.
Well, it's exciting to have you because we're all big fans of Sex and the City.
Oh, thank you.
I've seen it all, yeah. But it's been almost 25 years since you wrote that. And I'm just curious, are you surprised that almost 25 years later, it still resonates with people the way it does?
Well, I'm thrilled, and I think one of the reasons why it resonates is because Sex and the City is really about a particular passage in women's lives. I mean, a lot of women really feel like I had those Sex and the City years, and then what happens, of course, is many women who have the Sex and the City years end up having a family. They find their Mr. Big or their Mr. Aiden, and they have children. And then Is There Still Sex in the City is what happens after the happily ever after, because the fact is life goes on.
But whatever you're doing, you're doing it right. And I want to plug your book because we got a great book buying audience. Is There Still Sex in the City? The book is available right now. So the book is obviously it's fiction, but it's based on you and your friends, right?
It is. It's like Sex in the City, and actually it was the same impetus writing Is There Still Sex in the City as I had writing Sex in the City. I really felt like this is a new time in women's lives and it's uncharted territory. That is true, because I I was drinking Cosmos actually while I was writing the book Sex and the City. And of course, one of the first things that we did, Darren Star, who is the big producer on Sex and the City, for instance, with Sarah Jessica Parker, the first thing we did was we went to see her in Once Upon a Mattress, and then we went out and we had Cosmos. And the same thing with Kim Cattrall. We had Cosmos. We had the signature drink.
I love it. And this, like, you've been working on this for 2 years. This wasn't like a COVID project. This was something you've wanted to do.
This was actually, it really came out of my book, Is There Still Sex in the City? Which is the Sex in the City woman 25 years later. And, you know, again, like Sex in the City, I really used myself and my friends. So I was writing about some of my friends from the Sex and the City days. In some ways, like, you know, the original Miranda and you know, my kind of original Samantha. I ended up meeting up with them again years later, and all of our lives had changed. And so it was really about dating again over 50 and being single again over 50. This is not a sequel to Sex and the City, but it has different characters. But the inspiration for writing it was the same feeling that I had when I started writing Sex and the City. And when I started writing Sex and the City, the feeling was really like, this is uncharted territory.
Ever wonder where the ladies of Sex and the City would be today in a world with Tinder dating and cubbing? Well, author Candace Bushnell is here to answer that question.
Yeah, her new book, Is There Still Sex in the City? Love that title. It's out everywhere now, and we are so excited that she is here. Welcome. Tell us about this book for those who haven't picked it up yet.
You know, the impetus for writing this book was really the same impetus that I had when I was writing Sex and the City. And when I wrote Sex and the City, which was 25 years ago, I was single. I was in my 30s, and the question was, why are there so many great women in their 30s and no great men to marry them? And
Hey, isn't that Mr. Big?
Yeah. Oh, I'm gonna go over and say hi.
Ditching us now.
Well, have you ever wondered where the ladies of Sex and the City would be in the world of today's dating, of Tinder and all of that stuff? Well, author Candace Bushnell is here to answer that question with her new book, Is There Still Sex in the City? Thank you so much for joining us this morning. So first, tell us a little bit about the book.
well, first of all, the book, it's not a sequel to Sex and the City because it has different characters, but it has that spirit of you know, Sex and the City, but it's really Sex and the City kinds of situations, but for women in their 50s. It's these kinds of things and questions and answers. And Sex and the City fans, of course, we talk a lot about Sex and the City. And
how could you not?
Whether or not there was a real Mr. Big, that kind of thing.
Well, it's been 20 years since Sex and the City, a book that really changed how people talk about sex and dating. And the best-selling author Candace Bushnell has a new book out there. Is There Still Sex in the City? So Candace, tell us about the personal inspiration behind writing this, much like the first.
Well, I had a very similar feeling. When I was writing Sex and the City, I was in my mid-30s, and I was single.
Hi everyone, it's Amy Scalia with Cincy Chic, and I'm here with Candace Bushnell, and I am so excited. We have the creator of Sex and the City right here in Cincinnati, and she has a book that she just released, and I'm very excited to talk about it. So tell me about it.
It's called Summer in the City, and it's about Carrie Bradshaw's first summer in New York City when she's 17 going on 18, so she's very young.
Yeah.
But for me, it's something that's always interested me in writing about because I moved to New York when I was 19.
Yeah.
And I was thrust into this world of adults.
Yeah.
And I knew that I wanted to be a writer, so I was all about going around and saying to people, hey, I'm a writer. And it's really about how Carrie Bradshaw begins to find herself, and we see her turning into the fabulous Carrie Bradshaw
That we all know.
who we meet in Sex and the City.
So this is actually kind of a prequel to Sex and the City.
It is a prequel.
Yeah.
It is a prequel to Sex and the City. It's her first summer in New York, and it's how she meets Samantha and Miranda.
I want to rewind a little bit to where it all started. I'd love to do that, to hear the story where it started. So you had a column which inspired your book, Sex and the City. And where did you go from there?
I worked for women's magazines, and I wrote about women, relationships, and sex. And interestingly, I was really doing what would be the precursor to Sex and the City in the 80s, because a lot of the characters in Sex and the City, the column, the book, and eventually the TV series were actually friends that I had when I was in my mid-20s. It's really my work and my particular take on single women, relationships, the economics of being a woman in the big city. We're really
right. Is there still Sex in the City? Author Candace Bushnell is famously known for her book, which became the iconic series Sex in the City. Candace Bushnell's latest book, Is There Still Sex in the City?, takes us to the next level. Life in love, marriage, children, divorce, and bereavement all factor in, as well as the very real pressures women face every day in an attempt to have it all. And Candace Bushnell joins us live. Candace, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
So I have to say, I have been such a fan of yours since I believe Sex and the City debuted right as I was finishing up college. And I completely fell in love with the narrative of the series.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you.
I'm sure you hear that a lot, but as I've been able to grow and the characters grew and changed and everything, so many of us, I think, who were, hardcore fans wanted to know what sort of became of the characters as time goes on. And I feel like this book, in a way, kind of picks up there.
Well, in a sense, I think it does in terms of age. It's not a sequel to Sex and the City.
No, that's very true, yes.
It has all different characters, but the feeling that I had when I was writing Sex and the City, it's the same feeling where I felt like this is women in uncharted territory. We really haven't seen these women. And indeed, this really is the Sex and the City woman kind of 20 years later from where she started in the 90s. So, I was the Sex and the City woman. I was single. I had my Mr. Big. We broke up, but I found my Mr. Bigger. And I had my Sex and the City friends. Most of them ended up getting married and having what I call the reproductive lifestyle. You're partnered and all of that. But then, 20 years later, things change. And a lot of women find themselves single again. For a lot of women, it's choice. So it really feels like, yes, it is that same kind of Sex and the City woman, but now she's in her 50s.